Well, we are going to talk today about one of my favorite subjects.
Me. Again.
I said one of, yes.
Yeah,
you are one of them.
I'm one.
Grandbabies.
Oh, yeah.
Grandbabies. And if you're listening and you don't have grandbabies, or you're not old enough to have grandbabies, do not count me out, because we're going to talk about you and your kids and your own parents in the realm of grandparenting.
And the relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be really, really interesting, because I think that there are a lot of things to talk about, but there are a lot of surprising things that I have found out just in kind of researching grandparents, relationship that grandparents have with their grandchildren and with their own children, and how it affects even our mental health. Like I didn't know this when I was growing up and my own grandparents were, involved in my life. So
yeah, there's a lot of studies that talked about the longevity of us as grandparents when we have access to and relationship with the kids.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of studies about how beneficial it is for the grandkids.
Yes.
When they have access to the grandparents.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting part of the topic.
Yeah.
And then also the parents that they're not grandparents yet, but they've got kids. And how do they interact with their parents relating to their kids?
Yep.
So you could probably do a solo on this one, and I'll just sit back.
No. I believe one of the biggest, most powerful antidepressants known to man is a bond between a child and their grandparent. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's happened in our life with our grandkids is something about being around them. For me, even if things are crazy and it's chaos, it just automatically makes me happier. Like I feel like it pulls me out of my world into their world, and it just changes so much of my perspective. I do know,
not just being around them, but we could be sitting here on the couch, just having a conversation, having a meal. And if you get a text with either pictures
it's true,
or videos
yes,
that our daughter-in-law will send over.
I know.
So
it just makes us happy.
For you parents that have children, if you could send a picture to your parents, or your spouse's parents, oh my goodness, if you could see her face when she gets a video,
I know, or
a text picture,
so sweet.
Everything else in the room
it pauses.
It does.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, I think too that one of the things that I ran across this statistic that kids who spend regular time with their grandparents show 30% fewer signs of depression, lower cortisol, and higher empathy. And even saying that, I want to reiterate, because I feel like we have said this all the time on our podcast. Like we kind of operate in the main lane of what we would call normalcy. We deal with vanilla, like your basic things. We don't off-road into this extreme or that extreme. And I know that there are families out there that have tenuous relationships with their parents, which would be our age, the grandparent age, because they feel like maybe their parents are toxic, they're not healthy for their kids or whatever. So I want to clarify really quickly what I mean by, a healthy grandparent, because it's kind of hard to, I know there's always people watching that are like, you don't know my parents. Like I can't let my kids be around this. But I believe that a healthy grandparent, for example, is an encouraging grandparent rather than a critical grandparent. We've all been around those people who, no matter what you do, it's constant criticism. And I'm not talking about constructive criticism that is asked for, just critical, A healthy grandparent, I believe, is supportive, able to be collaborative and harmonious in nature rather than competitive. Like I have heard of some people who literally compete with their child, even though maybe they're our age or older, which I just think is crazy. I'm like, I don't I don't get that, but I'm talking about healthy in those terms. A healthy grandparent is harmless and safe rather than hurtful. And I think that those, like, you can say, oh, well, so-and-so is hurtful. Well, this is where relationship comes into play. Like, I want my children and my daughters-in-law to be able to say, hey, you may not have meant this way, but when you said XYZ, I kind of felt this way. Communication is key. I believe a healthy grandparent is uplifting and respectful instead of degrading. And I think a healthy grandparent is kind. They are empathetic. They value their children, their grandchildren. They use words that build up instead of a verbally abusive grandparent. So for the sake of our listeners today, those kinds of healthy grandparents, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a toxic grandparent. So
now, when you put your hands up and you kind of create boundaries, kind of the picture I get is probably the 60% middle of the road. Mm-hmm. And then you've got 20% fringe this side, and then 20% fringe this side, so the 60%. And I don't know, while you were talking about the competitive side of grandparenting, there's still some competitiveness in grandparents, whether it's games or time spent or whatever, or sports. I just kind of got a picture as we're coming into the holiday season, and there's going to be plenty of holiday movies on Hallmark, which is one of your favorite ones. And they're kind of humorous, but
they are.
Some of them are competitive grandparents. They're trying to outgift somebody or spend more time, or this one's the more fun one. So is that what you're talking about when you talk about a competitive grandparent?
No, I'm talking about a grandparent that competes with a parent, maybe for your child's love.
Oh.
Or a place in their life. That I know. Yes. That's the kind of competitive nature that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being competitive in sports or.
I'm talking about competitive with the other grandparents.
Oh, no. I don't. Yeah, I think that's toxic too.
Well, it could be, but that's kind of funny. But competing with your kids for the relationship with the.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff never crosses my mind.
I don't know that it crosses my mind, but it does cross my social media feed. So.
What does that actually look like?
Like to compete for, like a grandparent that competes with their child for maybe the love or a place in their grandchild's life is maybe a grandparent who is always breaking the rules or blurring the lines of what's acceptable and unacceptable with a kid. Like, I'm going to always give you whatever you want to eat or sugar, or I'm going to stretch bedtime. I'm not going to keep a schedule. These are just benign ones, but that way the grandkid always knows, like, oh, grandma or grandpa, I always get my way here. So of course I'm going to fight to, see them or do that. Or I've heard of parents who maybe a grandmother that has daughters that competes in the area of looks or their self-image, always being critical of something that the daughter wears. And, maybe if they're, it's just crazy things. I'm just trying to pull out of the top of my head of things that I've seen on, because I believe everything that I see on social media is true. So, but until I have a reason to believe it's not true.
See, for me, as being a grandparent, I always think about what are the consequences. The second, third, fourth order of consequences. You've talked about that. Mm-hmm. I see if let's say the grandkids are going to spend the weekend with us, mm-hmm. and if we blur those lines or obliterate it with their diet or how late they stay up or whether they get to argue and debate, if I allow all that, what I'm thinking, well, that's the first order consequence, and that makes it's pretty easy just to give in. The rule is if the first order of consequence is easy, second, third, fourth is more difficult. Mm. And so that means now when they go home, I have created a pattern over the last maybe 48 hours that the children are going to have a more difficult time with their parents getting back in line with the diet, the going to bed on time or arguing. So it's like, I feel like if I give in here and make it real easy for them, I'm actually making it really hard for them when they go back home.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking if I were those children, my adult children that are parents, if they're having to deal with a huge mess when they get the kids back from me, I'm thinking that might make it to where they don't want to let them go spend the weekend with grandparents.
Well, and let's boil this down to brass tacks in our own life, because our only children that have children at this point are Taylor and Lindsay. And so I know what Lindsay has said and what she allows and doesn't allow. But I'm very, very blessed because I feel like she's not such a stickler that she's, I better follow these rules or whatever, or, I'm going to pay the price, because we've talked through some of these things. We've lived through some situations with our own grandchildren that, at the end of the day, she's like, I realize there are times where you need to just survive. You can't always do this. I feel like the way she's explained this to me and the way that we've worked through things, I have some freedom and some leeway, but out of my respect for her, because I love her, I don't want to make her life difficult, and I don't want to make the lives of my grandchildren difficult. I will do my best to stay within the guardrails of the rules that I know they prefer. I think you run into a problem when, if I were a grandmother who I lived according to the saying that, it's my prerogative as a grandma, what happens at grandma's house stays at grandma's house, kind of thing.
Load them up with sugar.
Whatever. Yes. Then if that could be a potential issue, if that became a pattern. Now there are times that we know, like there have been times where all we can do is just turn on Cars or, because of just extenuating circumstances, or there's meltdowns and we just need a moment's peace. But again, we're talking about generalized things. And what you said reminds me of something that I saw the other day. I even screenshotted this. This is a social media post because I was like, wow, this is really, this felt like really, really, it went along the lines of what we're talking about. And it was basically about a grandmother. Hold on, give me a minute to find it, because of course now that I'm looking for it, I can't find it.
You want me to sing?
Can you sing, please?
I really
Okay.
can't.
It was someone on social media, I think it was Instagram, Heart Notes from Her. That's her handle. And she posted this and it said, "This night changed how I see my mom." And this is what she said. She was letting the kids watch cartoons on her phone, even though I had already said no. So I asked her, "Why can't you say no to your grandkids when you said it to me 1,000,000 times growing up?" Without hesitation, my mother smiled and said, "I'm experiencing the little version of you all over again, but this time with more patience and a gentle kind of love." And then it hit me. The extra snacks, the screen time, the bending of rules, not breaking, the bending of rules. It isn't her going against me, but it's her loving my kids so much that sometimes those boundaries blur. And maybe that's the beauty of being a grandmother, that she gets to love without limits the way she wished she could the first time with me. And so I feel like that is like a kind of what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about behavior that sets up into like a pattern that's going to cause like families to, part ways down the road. I think a lot of it boils down to respect, And I also found, before we get into the meat, and this is not a heavy podcast today. It's more of a happy podcast, because I think being a grandparent and have grandbabies is one of the greatest joys of a grandparent's life. But when I'm thinking in relation to where does Scripture have anything to say about grandparenting, about the impact that grandparents have on children? And I came up with a few. Deuteronomy 4:9 says, Be sure to stay alert, keep close watch on yourselves. Don't forget anything of what you've seen, and don't let your hearts wander off, but teach what you've seen and heard to your children and grandchildren. So that's biblical. Teach what you've seen. We tell a lot of stories to the grandbabies, or I do because I put them to bed. And that seems to be like one of the beautiful parts that Kate loves, telling stories. She likes to hear stories about her dad when he was little, and I'll tell her stories about maybe ways that we've experienced some miracles in our life, because she's old enough now that she's starting to put some of this together for her own life. Psalm 78, he planted a witness in Jacob. He set his word firmly in Israel, then commanded our parents to teach it to their own children, and so on to the next generation. That next generation would know, and all the generations to come would know, and know the truth and tell the stories so that their children can trust in God. So I think there's a lot of scripture that backs up into what we're talking about in spending time with grandchildren. Like, we're not just taking care of their physical needs, but we're stewarding them spiritually, you know. I know even like stories that you can like pull out of thin air and even make up for them, but have like some sort of concrete lesson in it for them is super, super powerful. So just so you know that I'm not just pulling things out of my head because I love being a grandparent. The Bible does have something to say about the impact of grandparents on their grandchildren. So,
love it.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. I believe that a grandparent's love and proximity basically hardwires resilience into their children. And there's reasons that I think this happens. I think that a brain of a child is shaped by relationships that make them feel safe. As a grandparent, I have the ability to help my grandchildren feel safe. I have said this so many times to Kate. I'm not going anywhere. If she has a meltdown, I'm not going anywhere. You're safe to tell me whatever you need to tell me. Now, granted, she's not 6 months old. She's 6 years old. The older she gets, I want her to know that she can always feel safe with us. You know, not in that she's going to tell me things and I'm going to keep it secret from her parents, but safe, the grandparent kind of safe. Like, do you remember sitting on your grandma's lap? Like, grandma's laps are usually kind of squishy and soft because the older we get, you know, we're not as lean. You know, like things like that. Like, I want those memories in her. I want her to feel safe and heard, and that to be something that she carries on in her as she grows, you know? So we bring a unique form of safety, of consistency, of patience, and low pressure to our kids' lives. I feel like if you roll back the hands of time, as parents, and you and I have talked about this, both of us are somewhat type A personalities. Would you agree?
I would.
We're both firstborns. We felt the pressure of raising our kids a certain way, of making sure that they knew how to behave, that they listened, that they did this, they did that, all the ways that you raise your kids. There's pressure on a parent, and maybe for me it was just perceived pressure, but these are your kids. Like I felt so responsible for how did they behave in public? How did this happen? How are they going to show up at school? How are they going to interact with their friends or with other adults or their own grandparents? I believe as a grandparent, we bring a little lower pressure relationship to the picture. Do you feel as pressured to, like, for your grandkids' like behavior as you did with our own kids?
No, not even close.
So that's my point, is that as grandparents, we bring a low pressure relationship, you know, to the picture. You have anything to say?
No, it's good.
Are you okay?
I'm great.
You're just really quiet today.
I'm listening.
Is it because I'm over talking?
I wouldn't say over talking.
Okay.
I'm learning. Sitting at the feet of the master.
Whatever. Stop. Oh, stop. Anyway, that's what I mean by hardwiring. Like there's certain things we hardwire into the brains of our children.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Well, you just did.
Okay.
Here's another thing that I learned. And I'm not a big science geek. I'm more of an English girl. But when a child is with a grandparent, their amygdala activity, which is your stress center, decreases, and there's a rise in oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yes. So that's what I mean by, that's why I clarified a healthy grandparent, not one that feels toxic or that's scary to the grandchild, because you can't feel a bonding hormone. Your bonding hormone's not going to release if you are scared of a grandparent, clearly. So that's kind of a combination in the brain that communicates you're safe. So I did not know these either. I just found this in my research. So bringing some science to the table. You like it?
Love it.
Here's another thing. A study from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child in 2022 shows that if a child from a high-stress home spends consistent time with grandparents and extended family, that it can protect against anxiety and emotional dysregulation. So there's probably a lot of people out there that are like, oh, I don't live close to my parents. I would love to be able to live close enough so my kids can spend time with my parents, or there's grandparents maybe out there saying, but I can't get there. I can't travel to see my grandchildren. Well, it's 2025 and we have FaceTime or we have Zoom. Like, I feel like there aren't a lot of excuses now because we don't live back in the 80s and 90s. We live in 2025. So my mother, who lives with us, has great grandbabies that live in different places. She has 2 here, but she has 3 other ones that live out of state. And FaceTime is a wonderful thing. Like every Monday morning, she is on FaceTime with, one of her grandbabies. The other one isn't old enough to be able to actually communicate yet. But little things like that, I think that your face can become known to your grandchildren via technology now, but you have to make the effort to do that. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Got to be willing to be inconvenienced and learn something new. Because I think a lot of grandparents, neither one of us are technology geeks. You said science geeks, but it's worth learning.
Yeah.
How do you use Zoom, or how do you get into FaceTime?
Yeah.
So good.
I remember back when Kate was born and when everything shut down not too long after. My mom lived in Arizona, my sister lived in Missouri. And we would I'd set up a Zoom call when I would watch Kate. And she's tiny. She doesn't even remember this, but I have videos to prove it, and we'll watch videos like that now. And she just really thinks it's so fun. But I would set a Zoom meeting, and my mom and my sister would log in, and I'd set up my laptop, and she might be sitting in her little chair, that has all the little activities in it. And we would literally watch her for hours. And at one point, my sister asked me, she was like, is this normal? Are we normal? Is there something wrong with us that we wouldn't even talk to each other. We would just watch her and just be so enamored, because she was my mom's first great grandbaby. She was my first grandbaby. Amy didn't have grandbabies at this point, but even little things like that, you figure out how to introduce yourself to these little people. And I just think we're very, very fortunate to live in the day that we live in, especially since not all of our families live close by. So anyway, you want to go on? Are you interested in this?
Of course.
Grandparents give grandchildren something that is difficult for parents to give, which is presence without performance.
Good one.
And that hit me this morning, because we've talked on our podcast so much about how we wanted our kids to perform well. We wanted our kids to present well. I think that, like what I said before about the low pressure, there's something, and maybe I'm just speaking for me, there was something that I felt like, if I don't train my kids the right way, they're not going to present well. Not that I wanted them to perform, but
you might not have wanted to, but I would bet money that's, if they could put it into words, they would have felt like it was tied to how they performed.
Right.
And they would, unbeknownst to them or even us at the time, we would be creating little mini me's tied to performance.
Yeah.
And that, it would be so subtle, but so easy to do.
Yeah, that's true. I believe as a grandparent, we can offer them presence without the added performance, or because there have been many times, like, we've been around the chaos of it all, and sometimes you have to just sit down and just let it happen, and know that it's going to die down in about 2 minutes, and you're just there for it. Another statement that I came across that I loved is, grandparents don't measure, but they mirror. I feel like as a grandparent, I can help my grandchild feel worthy just for being there and existing and being, they don't have to. I want them to mirror just the joy that I feel just because they are, So children who see their grandparents on a weekly basis tend to have lower baseline cortisol levels. And we all know what cortisol is. Cortisol is that stress hormone. It's correct me if I'm wrong. You need cortisol to show up sometimes. Like if you're getting ready to get mauled by a bear, cortisol is going to help you, in your self-defense. Like you don't want to just sit there and let it happen. But too much cortisol, like in this day and age, I wonder if kids feel with social media and with things that like our kids didn't have to deal with, like what the pressure feels like. Like, are they stressed because of grades and this and keeping up with, what their friends are doing? And I think that was present when we were raising our kids, but it probably presented differently. But I want our grandkids to have lower baseline cortisol levels. I don't want them to feel stressed all the time and then have to be on medication because of all of that. So, one last study, really fast. A UK study from the University of Oxford, 2021, shows that children with strong grandparents and their relationships reported higher life satisfaction and better coping after family conflict. So we've pulled in the spiritual side of grandparenting, the scientific side of grandparenting, the practical side of grandparenting. I think that grandparents play such an amazingly important role in the life of kids that I just feel really, really fortunate that we have grandbabies and we can be a part of their lives. And, so if you have parents that are not close to your grandparents or to your grandbabies or to your children, then I think I would encourage our listeners to somehow figure out a way. If you don't have major toxic traits in your family, figure out a way to get your kids in front of your parents as often as you can, even if it's via technology. And just share some of this even with them. So I think all grandparents don't feel the same. Maybe there's grandparents out there who don't feel like, well, all I'm doing is I'm just babysitting, or I'm watching the baby while, my son or son-in-law or daughter-in-law or whoever it is grocery shops. I think as a grandparent, if you really, really dig below the surface and realize that you have such an integral part to the development of your grandchildren, maybe it will change the way that you view it. So,
okay.
What do you think?
I want to take it a slightly different direction.
Tell me.
I'd like to spend a little bit of time in two different categories. with us having some dialogue that is really geared towards any of the grandparents that are listening.
Yeah.
And then also us having dialogue to any adults that are listening, and how does it pertain to their parents as the grandparents of their kids, and kind of get as practical as possible.
Okay.
Is that okay? Because I'm thinking from, any grandparents that are listening. I mean, I have seen, we've seen it done well. We've seen it done not so well. We've seen it done in social media. We've seen it done on TV. There's no shortage of options for grandparents and how they're supposed to, quote, perform. And, we are very fortunate that our grandkids are nearby. But to your point, if they weren't, we would find a way to create a presence at a distance, right? So if we're going to be talking to other grandparents, what I know you've hit some studies and different things, but what are some maybe really, really practical things that you would encourage other grandparents to do to be a part of, in a positive, healthy way, part of their grandchild's life?
Well, if we lived far away from our grandbabies, I believe that there would be something in me that I would do whatever I could do to financially be able to travel at least twice a year to be with them in person.
I remember that was one of your requirements many years ago.
Yeah.
You used to tell me, no matter what we're doing, you have to make enough money that I can travel to go see my grandbabies.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, we're here, so I can afford to get you 20 minutes away.
Yes, thank you for that.
But I do remember making that an absolute requirement.
Yeah. I think another thing for me, I'm just speaking for me personally, that's important to me, if I did not live close to my grandchildren, especially, even though I do, making sure that I stay in as good a possible health as I can, so I am able to travel and see them. And I feel like the motivation behind that, it's an external motivation that somehow motivates me differently than if my motivation were just so I could not get fat or not be unhealthy. Like, we all have the not side of our motivation, but what is the for side of my motivation? Does that make sense?
Totally.
And so that would be another thing that I would make sure that I did, is kept myself healthy, not just so I could see them or travel to see them, but so that the longevity of my life is such that, I want to watch them grow up. I told Kate the other day, I don't know how this happened, but we got off onto this conversation of people dying, or, she's 6, she's almost 7. So there's our chats and our talks are different than they were 3 years ago. Yeah. But anyway, she had made the comment that, what if I'm not alive in however many years? And I was like, oh, sis, I'm going to watch you walk down the aisle at your wedding. I was like, you don't need to worry about that. I'm going to be here. Well, some people might have a problem with that because they might say, well, you can't guarantee that.
Which is true.
But I'm also prophetically declaring
you'll be here.
That I'm going to be here, and that my own subconscious mind hears that. She hears that. And it also kind of gives her a little peace of mind, So being able to travel, taking care of yourself first and foremost. And if we didn't live close to the babes, I don't know, I think I would maybe send care packages or something, little gifts that would put me in front of, so that they know I'm thinking of them, even if I'm not with them.
Yep.
That would be something I would do.
Okay. What about if you are close? What would you do differently?
What would I do differently?
Not from what you currently do, but from your prior analogy of if you weren't close by. Since we're close, or if any grandparents that are watching, they're close to their kids, what would you recommend for them?
Well, I can only speak from what I think I currently do.
Okay.
But I believe that as long as it depends on me, I am going to say yes as often as I can.
And you do.
And I do. And I do, which I love, because I don't believe I'm ever going to look back on my life and regret the amount of time I've spent with my grandchildren. Does that mean that every time I'm with them is super easy and everything just flows like honey? No, it does not. But it just means that I get to be there. I get to be up close and personal and an integral part of their lives.
Can you even remotely imagine a grandparent saying at or near the end of their life, I spent way too much time with my grandkids?
No.
I cannot imagine that ever happening. Something I was thinking is nearby, and we've done this recently, is get permission from the parents if we want to do something a little bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah. Right?
So not too long ago, finally got cool here in the Nashville area, and I wanted to do a fire pit.
Yeah, well, I remember that.
I texted Taylor and Lindsay, got permission. Some parents or grandparents would feel like, that's no big deal. Just do it. No, out of respect for Taylor and Lindsay as them being the parents, and I would have been totally okay if they'd say, "Yeah, I'd rather not. I'm not going to get my feelings hurt. Not going to be offended."
You're just going to pivot.
I'll pivot
to something different.
Do something else. But that was a great night. She got burned, but
she did burn her toes.
She learned what happens when you get too close and touch the solo stove.
Yeah.
Got little crusty toes, I think is what she called them, right? A few days later. But we got to grill hot dogs, got to enjoy the fire.
Marshmallows.
She was just a little chatty Cathy.
She said it was the best night ever.
Even after she got burned, she said
she did. Yeah. And she also told her parents that their hot dogs over the fire aren't as good as Pop Bears.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But get permission to do something. I think something else that was, when we think about doing something different out of the ordinary, one, that does a wonderful thing for us internally in our energy levels, that we were doing something differently. It does amazing for the relationship between us and the grandchild, because it is something different, which makes it now more memorable. So definitely just reaching out to the other grandparents that are watching, well, take advantage of any opportunity you get to spend with them. And then think about what you can do that is going to help build that relationship. And if it is somewhat out of the ordinary, just get permission, and then don't be offended if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Something else that I think would be very, very beneficial is, like, as a grandparent, what can we do to help train up or to educate our grandkids? Obviously within alignment with what their parents are going to do. But like I've started doing what we now call cake coins. It's just change that I've got in the car, and always make sure we've got some available, but some would probably call it gambling, but we do heads and tails. And, she has to get 2 out of 3, and she gets to keep the coin.
Yeah.
Only if she can tell me the denomination of the coin. What is it called? Nickel or dime or quarter, and how much is it worth? So not only does she have to play the game, heads or tails, she's also got to tell me the name of it and what it's worth.
Yeah.
And we'll morph that into, she's going to have to start adding them up, right? We haven't gotten into all the numbers yet, but I know that that's something that will help her, and it will help the kids, her parents, our kids. But that's something too, is what else can we teach? What value can we add? If we're always looking at how can we add value to our kids' lives by adding value to the grandkids, it's a win-win.
I think a powerful thing that we do is stories, because I feel like stories somehow tether a child to their family in a way that, and I'm doing this with my hands because I talk with my hands, but in a way that we tend to think that they're just going to feel tethered, they're going to feel apart. Well, not necessarily. I think that their stories, in talking about stories even from when I was a little girl, she's real interested. And if Kate is interested in stuff like that, I will venture to say most kids are going to be interested in What were your parents like? What were her parents like or his parents like when they were growing up? As a grandparent, what were we like? Things that, I've told her stories about me before when, I've gotten in trouble in the past when I was a young girl, or things that happened on the farm with my sister. And so little things like that, stories tether a kid to their heritage, and I would even venture to say that there have been times I've made up some stories, because I remember some parts of stories, but I don't always remember all of the details. But I think telling stories is a beautiful thing. If you start weaving it around the truth of something that happened and you make up things as you go, there's nothing wrong with that either.
No, that's why that supports the science that talks about why people should be reading fiction books, is because it engages totally different parts of the brain than if we are only looking at statistics or data or real life. So when you're telling stories, that's just like reading a fiction book. Their little minds are getting engaged in it. They're getting pictures, and so I think that's wonderful. Yeah. But anything else that you would encourage? Because we're going to switch and talk about how can we maybe help parents build the relationship between their parents and their children. So, but right now, anything else that you would encourage grandparents to either be aware of or encourage them on before we switch gears?
Just don't give up. Just keep being a part. Keep, we say this too in relation to our own children, but keep pursuing, pursue.
Yeah, you touched on something that just, I think, is worth saying. It's been a few months. I don't even remember what podcast we were talking about, but the topic of grandparenting did come up, and there's a lot of hurt out there between some parents with their grandkids and their grandparents don't do anything with or for their grandkids. And they're heartbroken because their grandparents or their parents aren't involved. And it seemed like they don't want to be involved. And then there's been others where grandparents are heartbroken because something that they did or said years ago so offended their kids that their kids won't let them have any relationship with their grandkids either.
Yeah.
So the key word that you triggered on that was don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Relationships take work.
Yeah, they do.
They take a lot of work. And, it would be real easy, again, if we're going to go back to the first, second, third order consequences, it would be real easy to throw your hands up and say, it's just too hard.
Yeah.
Well, that's the easy way out. And if it's easy first, it makes second, third, and fourth hard. But oftentimes, if we'll tackle the first one that's hard, it will make the second, third, and fourth easier. There's an inverse relationship in first, second, third, fourth order consequences, and you can go at nth degree on that. But I love the phrase, just don't give up.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, and I think too, it's so much of relationships, it's a mind game, if you think about it, because the enemy wants us to be paranoid. And again, I'm talking about us right now. Like we've even had conversations of, wow, like I tried to text one of the boys like days and days ago, never heard back. And then, before I know it, I'm thinking, oh, they're mad at me. I've done something or whatever. Well, no, that's not necessarily the case. It just means every time, like they haven't mad. They're just busy. Things have happened. And I think it's the same even with grandparenting. All relationships are going to take work. And for whatever reason, there's something in me or in us, we've talked about this before, that we haven't really expected to run up against issues. And then when we run up against an issue or something even that we've got to deal with in our head, we're surprised by it. And when you said relationships take work, that hit home for me, because if it was easy, everybody would be, sailing off into the sunset and, nothing like it doesn't, we don't have to flex muscles or work parts of us if things are always handed to us easily. I think there's so much of our emotional maturity that's developed and grown through having to maybe we hit up against an issue, even if it's a perceived issue, but we have to deal with it. And once I hit up against it, I have a choice. I can give into it and I can act as though it's true, or I can refute it and, what does the Bible say about this? And then I can wait to make sure that, what I'm perceiving is not true or it is true. And I think a lot of that goes back to communication. We've always say communication is probably the number one hump or obstacle that people have to deal with in any relationship. Don't make assumptions.
I would still agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. To the adults that are listening, that have children at home, how would you encourage them to, how would we encourage them to understand the value that the grandparent can have in their child's life? Or maybe a second side of that coin is how could we encourage them to get their grandparent or their parents involved as grandparents?
I think it depends on, like you had mentioned a while ago, that there's a section of people who they're sad because their parents are not part of their grandchildren's lives and they want them to be. I think if that is the case, I would encourage people to have a conversation with their parents. Maybe your parents don't understand what you need from them or what you would like to have, what that relationship, what you want it to look like with them and their grandchildren. Because sometimes I think you've got extremes of parents. Some parents are really hands-off because they don't want to encroach and be an issue. And that can come across to kids as you don't really care. You don't want to be a part of our life. But sometimes I think, and maybe that's the case, I don't know, but maybe they're waiting for direction from you. They're waiting to know, like, what do you need? And if they don't ever see a gap that they can help fill, I don't know, maybe they don't feel like they're needed. So maybe communicate. If you're that kid who needs your parent to come a little closer. And what was the other question? Sorry, I lost my thought train.
Yeah, you lost me too.
So there's grandparents who aren't a part of their parents' life, but the kid who wants them to be. And then there was another subset that I was going to.
Yeah, my mind went on to another topic.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I got a little chatty.
If I'm going to be talking to any adults that are listening to this, I would really want them to understand that how you interact with your parents has a direct correlation to the parent's quality of life. Now, I don't mean to put undue pressure on any adults that are listening, but if you as an adult and you have children at home are intentional about, like what Lindsay does for you, and Taylor does as well, if they are intentional about sending pictures to you, I would love for them to know, what does that do for your quality of life? They're not here to see it. Mm-hmm. But every time you get a picture or a video of your grandkids, the quality of your life escalates.
Yeah.
And it takes intentionality on their part. But if they were here, if Taylor and Lindsay were here, it's like, how much effort did that take?
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to the adults, it's like the value that you could add to your own parent's life by sending a text picture or a video of the grandkids. Mm-hmm. And if you could see the benefit that it creates in your parent's life, I think that you would do that more often. Mm-hmm. It's not that hard. It doesn't cost any money. I just can't think of a single reason that a parent or that an adult child wouldn't do that for their parent. But maybe they don't understand how, or
maybe they don't have the relationship with the.
So let's make first the assumption that there is a relationship there, and it's okay. It's good. I don't think I would have known about this had I not watched you experience it. I mean, I love it as well, but you stop everything. You pause the TV or you pause the music. If there's anyone in the room, they're no longer. It's like they're non-existent.
Yeah.
You are literally focused in on that. And so for the parents that are listening, your parents will do the same thing. Mm-hmm. The fact that you took the time to send a picture, send a video, priceless.
Yeah.
I mean, your phone, you had to get a phone with larger memory.
I had to buy more memory. I do. I pay money every month. Because you're not
getting rid of those things.
I will never get rid of them. Never.
So that's not that hard.
Or FaceTime. Like just FaceTiming someone, like a grandparent. There's times I would FaceTime your mom, but she doesn't have an iPhone, so that's an issue. But like my sister, I'll FaceTime my sister with the kids and, little things like that. That's what I'm talking about is we live in 2025. We have access to some pretty simple technology to use, So
here's the other part of that same scenario. Let's say that we're talking to adults and their grandparents or their parents don't have a good relationship with them. Come back to something you said a while ago. Don't give up.
Don't give up. And I think, again, I'm not talking about toxic, really dangerous personalities here, but sometimes I'm thinking in terms of me, like if I had a really bad relationship, maybe with one of my parents, maybe my children could have helped bridge that gap, like I can't hold my parent hostage and withhold grandbabies from them, right, unless there's like an actual issue. So I want to be clear about that. But, maybe some of the gap can be bridged by starting to send a picture here and there, a video here and there, because especially if a grandparent lives far away, it's like, that's a point of connection. Like we don't live far away. And I love knowing, like the other day, like the kids went on an adventure with their mom and she sent me some pictures and I love that because it makes me feel even more connected to their lives when I know, oh, what are you doing on this random Friday? And, I don't know, just little things like that. But that's just my personality. Yeah. I think you got to know.
And you've mentioned technology more than once. What was that thing that you and my sisters got my mom?
Oh, an Aura frame, AURA. Yeah, a lot of people have them. It's just a digital picture frame, and I can upload photos of grandbabies, of us, or whatever. And every time I upload photos to it, like I got a text from her the other day because I just uploaded about 14 pictures, and she always knows. She'll see when it comes on, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you just made my day."
I was going to say, and it makes the day.
It does.
It's like it took a little bit of intentionality on your part. Now we're talking about a great grandmother getting to see her great grandbabies and the value that it adds to her.
Yeah.
It is priceless.
Yeah.
So when we look at quality of life, relationships do matter.
Yeah.
And whether you're across town or across the country, it's not that hard.
It's not.
So I think it's a wonderful topic. It could be very painful for some scenarios, very life-giving for others. And I think there's a lot in the middle that could be enhanced if the communication piece was more intentional and there was more implementation of sending like some of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's a great topic. And I think it's one of the most fun roles that we have, just to be a grandparent.
Yeah.
I say just, but you read the statistics on what it does for their quality of life, our quality of life. And we're one of the few countries that we don't have multiple generations living in all the homes.
Yeah, under the same roof.
But we're starting to see more of it here.
Well, and here's a just to end on this, a phrase that I'm not super crazy about because of where it came from, but somebody once said it takes a village to raise a child. I believe as a grandparent, I can choose to be that village. It's not just about my grandbabies, it's about my kids. Like my sons, my daughters-in-law, like I want to be part of their village, to show up and yes, I want to have a relationship with my grandbabies and be a part of their lives, but I also want to do whatever I can to come alongside my kids. And one of the other things that I had found too while I was researching some of this is I feel like we don't just help the grandbabies, but we also help to protect parents. I think sometimes being able to take grandbabies off a parent's hand, it helps reduce parental burnout. Sometimes, the fatigue of parenting, emotional fatigue of parenting, it can really take a toll on parents. And I feel like that's a way that I can help my kids by being part of the village of helping to raise their children, which are my grandchildren. So it's about loving my kids by loving my grandkids, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Looking for something. Used to have something, a plaque that said, if I could do it all over again. Do you remember that one? Mm-hmm. And I can't remember. I was just looking, see if I could find it on Google real quick. But yeah, I think that as grandparents for us, one of the greater gifts that we can give our kids is insights on what we have learned now that we're no longer in the active parenting phase. And encourage, in this case, Taylor and Lindsay.
We're in the active grandparenting phase.
We are in active grandparenting. Yeah. That, different things that we've been able to encourage them to do. And what did we learn? You know what? We were way too intense as parents when we were actively parenting. Yeah. Way too intense. The boys survived, right? We did a Vision Cast family workshop the other day, and it's like, we're encouraging them because we survived.
Yeah.
We survived the teenage years.
Yeah.
But the relationship piece, it's vital.
Yeah.
It's so encouraging.
It is.
So how you want to land this thing?
I think you landed it great.
Okay.
I think you landed it great. It's all about just showing up for your kids, for your grandkids. And
I like yours. Don't give up.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
Keep pursuing.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Watch out.
Welch out.